So many Kenyans have lost their jobs, taken a pay cut or been sent on unpaid leave. And on Front Row, we explore the available options for the affected. One of these options is alternative dispute resolution, including mediation or negotiation. With my able panel, we will also respond directly to your questions during this show. I am Akisa Wandera. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Front Row. To participate in this conversation at this particular hour, you can send us your questions by logging into slido.com. Enter the event code as #TheFrontRow. We're also available on Twitter at KTN News KE, at Akisa Wandera. Use the #TheFrontRow. Here now are our panelists for this conversation. Let's take a look at who we have this hour. We start with Engineer Peter K. Tum, who was appointed to his current position as a Principal Secretary, State Department of Labor in the Ministry of Labor and Social Protection in the year 2019. Prior to his current appointment, Engineer Tum served as a Principal Secretary, Ministry of Health. Engineer Tum comes with a wealth of experience, having previously served as a Chief Executive Officer of the Kenya Medical Training College. Thank you, sir, for joining us tonight. Second, we have Ann Atieno Amadi, who's an advocate of the High Court of Kenya. She's joined the Judicial Service as a District Magistrate too in 1990 and rose through the ranks to become a resident magistrate before joining private legal practice as a sole proprietor at AA Amadi and Company Advocates. Amadi served at the Federation of Women Lawyers, FEDA, as Deputy Executive Director between the year 2003 and 2008 and as the National Coordinator of the National Legal Aid and Awareness Program, the Ministry of Justice, National Cohesion and Constitutional Affairs between 2008 and 2011. Now, until her appointment as the Chief Registrar of the Judiciary, she was working as a consultant, joining us tonight with vast knowledge with matters, legal matters, and especially on the topic at hand. Thank you for joining us tonight. Third, we have Ernest Nadome, who's the first Assistant Secretary General of the Central Organization of Trade Unions with over 2 decades of experience in trade unionism. Nadome is currently the National Secretary General of the Kenya Electrical Trades and Allied Workers Union. He chairs 3 boards and is a member of several others, and we're glad to have you here tonight to speak for the union. And finally, we have Jacqueline Moguls, who's the Chief Executive Officer of the Federation of Kenyan Employers. She's a lawyer by profession with specialization in labor law, human resources, corporate governance and leadership. She's the first Kenyan woman to head the Federation and the employers body in Africa. Mugo plays a strong leadership role in representing employers beyond Kenya and serves in various capacities at continental and international levels, including Secretary General of Business Africa, Employers Confederation, and the international boards of the International Labour Organization, ILO, as well as the International Organization of Employers as an elected member. Mugo also serves on various national boards, including the Higher Education Loans Board, the National Social Security Fund, as well as the National Industrial Training Authority. Those are our panelists tonight. And remember, you can as well join us, as I mentioned earlier, on slido.com. The hashtag to use is FrontRow, the Front Row, as well as on Twitter. Keep your questions coming for our panelists' comments, even as we start the conversation tonight. Let's begin with the Cabinet Secretary for Labor, Simon Chelugui, who was speaking on the massive job losses, painting a picture of the situation currently since the pandemic came knocking on March this year.
Numbers that we have received as a ministry, total notice of redundancies and job lost across the country from all sectors: education, agriculture, floriculture, aviation, number about 330,000. That is official record. Our estimate so far is 1.1 million shillings. 1.1 million people have lost their jobs across the country. But not all of them. Our numbers are low because not all of them report these redundancies. So our visit today is also to appraise ourselves on the level and the service given to protect those who are exposed, the vulnerable. And you know, the President did announce through my ministry an additional grant of 10 billion shillings to be given to the new vulnerables. We have the usual vulnerables, the BWDs, vulnerable and orphan children, and the senior citizens, those who are 70 years and above. We continue with that program. Recently, we did pay the arrears of January, February, March, and April, 8,000 shillings per caregiver.
Let's paint a picture of what really is the situation on the ground currently in terms of job losses owing to the current pandemic. These are statistics from a report from the Ministry of Labour as of May this year. 133,657 Kenyans had been rendered jobless. That is as of May this year from a report from the ministry. So starting with the media industry, of course, the Standard Media Group has implemented pay cuts, and there's a notice to declare redundancies anytime from now. The Nation Media Group, just the other day, we also saw them send a number of employees home, and they've also implemented a pay cut. MediaMax has implemented a 50% pay cut for employees, and we've witnessed massive layoffs from this media company. And of course, we've seen the Royal Media Services also implement about 25 to 30% pay cuts. That's generally what we're looking at in the media industry, one of those affected. Another sector largely affected by this pandemic, that's tourism and the transport sector, with 36,800 jobs currently at risk, especially in the airline sector. Well, it just doesn't end there. We're taking a look at numbers from KQ, still sending, if we could go to the next board, 100 employees sacked and more layoffs planned by the Kenya Airways. The number keeps growing. Just the other day, we saw among this number 22 pilots who'd been sent home. 90,600 people affected in the transport industry, rail, road, you name it. More than 90,000 of them they're affected, and 300,000 workers risk job losses in the tourism sector, just to mention that most of them are currently home on unpaid leave and are staring at job losses. So a report by KPMG states that manufacturers reduced casual employees by 40%. That's a report there on the manufacturing sector, just painting a picture on what things are like on the ground now. And apart from the 40%, that very report also says 17% of the manufacturers have reduced their permanent workforce. Of course, these are the ones that KPMG surveyed in this particular study that they did. More than 500 workers have so far been laid off, and this is casual workers in the manufacturing sector as well, one of the big sectors of the economy currently. In the horticulture sector, over 45,000 workers are currently on unpaid leave and consequently staring at job losses. Apart from that, we are seeing 900 of them already declared redundant in the horticulture sector so far. Talking about all the flower farms and their contribution to this economy. More than 15 flower farms have sent employees home so far, and they're staring at a very bleak future as a result of this. But with the reopening, are things going to get better? This is the situation currently in the horticulture sector, and 30,000 temporary workers have so far been laid off in the horticulture sector. That's the situation currently. And with these job losses and paid leave, you name it, we're facing grievances from workers, and that's why we're bringing in this conversation on alternative dispute resolutions. We've seen so many head over to the courts for litigation, but we're telling you there's another way. That's why we're having this conversation tonight, very representative of all bodies involved. I think we'll just get straight into it. To start off with the registrar, the judiciary, to just speak to us about the numbers first. The courts keep saying that they have a huge backlog, and one of the ways that they're implementing to ensure that they reduce this numbers is alternative dispute resolution. Anna Madi will start us off tonight, just giving us a picture, paint a picture for us on the courts and the numbers involved so far as case backlog is involved.
Thank you, Kisa. Currently, our case backlog stands at about 350,000 cases, generally across all the courts, starting from the magistracy all the way to the Supreme Court. Of course, the bulk of the cases are in the magistrates' courts, followed by the High Court in that order. Specifically concerning the Employment and Labor Relations Courts, we have about 13,000 cases, and we only have 12 judges in that court. So as the job losses are happening, as people are seeking to claim what they consider to be their rights, we only have 12 judges to deal with 13,000 plus cases, and we expect that to rise in view of the current situation. Kisa.
So with that, we're aware that the courts have a court-annexed mediation committee. Talk to us about that. How has that been so far since its inception?
Court-annexed mediation, and we're seeing more acceptance, we're seeing more uptake, particularly in the commercial division, in the family division, as well as the employment and labor relation. More judges are referring litigants to go through a reconciliation process with the employers before pursuing litigation. But again, more and more, we're seeing a lot of litigants being referred to what we call the court-annexed mediation, whereby the courts can advise to go and
All right. We seem to have a problem with your connection, and I'd like to come back to you once that is sorted out. But Sana Madi, the Chief Registrar of the Judiciary, saying that there are a backlog of 13,000 cases in the Employment and Labor Relations Court with only 12 judges, meaning if you go to court, it may take you longer to get reprieve. So then let's speak to the PS Labor Engineer Peter Toom. We've had this conversation before in the first part of the job crisis in terms of a pandemic. The last time you were on the show, you spoke about a committee that was set up about a year ago to take a look at alternative dispute resolutions, especially in the labor industry. How is that working so far?
Thank you very much, Akisa. The alternative dispute resolution is a mechanism where the employers, in the world of work, the employers and the employees would meet, have their disputes resolved through either arbitration, mediation, conciliation, or negotiation. And you realize that that is an alternative route that would be able to help the world of work by ensuring that then this can be dealt with before we go to court. And we can say we have a success story now that we are dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic. And I don't know whether you hear me.
Yes, we can hear you. Please go on. We can hear you clearly.
There is an echo. Yeah. So what I was saying is that this has really helped us in the sense that, like Amadi said, we have lots of cases that are waiting in court. But this has made it possible for us to be able to arbitrate and ensure that employers and employees deal with their issues at shop level before they can, take the alternative of going to court. And this has worked very well. The advantage of going this way is that, one, it is cost effective. Two, it is very, very efficient in terms of time. And three, they agree, the employees and the employers will end up agreeing and therefore foster their relationship, because under arbitration from the ministry, and like I told you last time, we have we gazetted the panel of 13 in February 2019 to be able then to take care of these cases whenever they come.
All right, let's hear from the employers. Of course, we'll be speaking expansively on that. How are employers finding this so far? And from where you sit as Executive Director, Ms. Mogo, of FKE, are you experiencing a spike in the number of complaints, especially employment and labor related?
Well, good evening, Akisa. It's a pleasure to be in on the program to discuss this very important issue, coming at a time that we are still grappling with COVID-19 and its impact on work and on jobs. And the picture that you painted at the beginning of the program is grim indeed. It affects both workers and employers. Are we seeing a spike in the number of disputes? Yes and no. Because most of the disputes that would normally be reported would go to the Ministry of Labour, where parties have failed to reach an agreement over a matter that has arisen either because of performance of the employee. But COVID-19 has brought an unusual and unexpected and unprecedented situation where both employers and unions, by and large, understood that we had to come together to agree on how to handle matters of employment and matters of sustainability of enterprises. So when we talk about jobs, we also need to talk about enterprises and their survival, because the disputes that would arise are about jobs and how one has been treated. But most of the people losing their jobs or having to be asked to go on unpaid leave or to take salary cuts are doing so because of the state of the enterprise and the state of the economy. So there are quite a number of enterprises that have written to the Ministry of Labour asking for redundancies. Quite a number of agreements have been reached at individual level with trade unions. I would not say I've seen a spike in disputes, but there are certain pockets of problems and challenges in sectors and companies where either the union or the employees are grappling with the impact of what the employer is deciding. They are unable to reach an agreement. Yeah. The problem is how to resolve those disputes in this current time. So the challenges are many. There's no multiplicity or sharp increase in the trade disputes as such, but there is a problem about jobs and their applications for redundancies. But by and large, we've seen accommodation by the unions, but we do have problems in some sectors. But the picture the registrar painted of 13,000 cases, which are already existing anyway prior to the pandemic, shows you that ADR is the way to go. Okay, great. Let's get the opening remarks from Anas Nadome, Assistant Secretary General to Kenya. The employers say there hasn't really been a spike in the number of disputes. Is it the same case from the union side?
Thank you very much, Akisa, for inviting me to this particular program. Now, to start off, I will agree to some extent with the employer representative, Madam Jacqueline. It is very true that from the face of it, there is no spike. But when you go down there, the situation is totally different. And is as a result of this particular pandemic. I would really want to pick from the words of the CS that this pandemic has hit us. And for the first time, just to attest to the word of the CEO of FKE, when this pandemic came, the initiative to engage the Ministry of Labour came from the employers and workers. It dawned on us that where we are now, it calls for all parties really to sit down and see how are we going to come out of this situation, because as the issues of sustenance of the enterprises dawned on us, and we said now we need to engage. And I'm happy that that bore fruits. We had a series of meetings at Ministry of Labour, which culminated in us signing guidelines on how employers and workers are supposed to engage. So as we speak, quite a number of unions have been able to engage their employers, because the gist of that particular guideline was that let the negotiations, let the agreement on what should happen in particular enterprises be between the unions themselves and the employers. And we are happy that some of the unions have gone as far as even agreeing, reducing, like the case, a classic case is the one of the aviation union with KQ and the pilots, where the salaries were drastically reduced. They even went further, and for the case of the hospitality. And let me commend really the employers, because they were able to agree that the union employees will be on salary from the month of March, April, and May on full salary, but the subsequent months they agreed they will be on unpaid leave. So as we speak now, there is that particular agreement in place, and the fact that the economy now has been open, the parties now will soon start engaging and see what do we do next in view of the government now opening the economy.
You mentioned the guidelines. Of course, that's under the MOU signed between the government, the employers and the unions. We're coming back to expound on that. Any questions to any of our panelists for you to be able to understand the alternative dispute resolutions and the mechanisms so far, both in the courts and with the Ministry of Labour and government? Do send us your questions. You can log into slider.com. Event code is #TheFrontRow on Twitter, at Akisa Wandera, at KTN News KE. The hashtag chooses FrontRow, as well as you can text us some of your questions and comments on 22155. Let's take a quick break. We'll be back with more.